Alright, before I put the arms back in, I'm going to go ahead and put shocks in because it's hard to get. This stupid crow over here is going crazy. It's hard to get to the bolts for the shocks after you get the bolt in here, so I'm going to do that now. And just like on the rear, I found these shocks in my shock pile. They are just a little bit longer than the stock shocks, and they are Rancho RS 5239, so I'll take those out of the budget. I had them on Craigslist for $20 a piece. And if you were wondering about the rear shocks, they are Rough Country 660635. I think while I'm at it, I'll also put the spring in, because right now I pretty much have the entire axle free except for the upper control arms, so now would be the good time to put the spring in. I won't need to use the spring compressor, at least on this side. It's going to be a bit of a trade-off though, because it's going to make it much harder to put the lower control arms in, because it's going to fight me. So it's either going to fight me putting the coil spring in later, or fight me putting the control arm in now. This side I'm not so lucky with the coil springs. I have to compress them a little bit. I don't know what's up with these coils. They seem like they're way too long for this Jeep, but we'll put them in there and see. Put it on upside down. Those spring compressors scare the crap out of me. Finally got it off though. Oh, give me a break. Look at that. I wanted to give you a comparison of the control arms. So this is the stock front lower ZJ. This is the stock lower rear ZJ. And this is the stock upper rear from a JK. So on the front here we're going from this, and I'm going to put in this one here and we'll test it out, see how it works. So the next step is I need to get the axle situated so that it'll fit from here to here. So I need to pull that axle forward and kind of angle it down a little bit. I'll start by putting the lower control arm in on the axle side, but I wanted to show you how these cam bolts work that we made. So there's an oval kind of piece right here, or actually it's circular, but it's off center. And so when you turn that bolt, it goes further in or out. You can see how this hole is ovaled out. So right here, it'll move the mounting point of the lower control arm forward, which makes it shorter. And if I turn it this way, you can see it pushes that bolt further back, which in turn makes the arm longer basically. So I think I'll start out with it being as short as possible and we'll see what happens. I'm also going to have to lift it up because it bottoms out right there. Alright, that's real close. The problem is the other side is at an angle, so I'm going to do the same thing on the other side as well. Now you could get away from doing this if you did the lower control arms before you put the springs in, but then I would have had a heck of a time compressing that far enough to be able to get it in, since this is such a long spring. if you had a shorter spring, it wouldn't be such a big issue. This is almost comical. I put the straps to my Jeep, but I forgot that there's no transfer case or drive shafts or anything, so I really have no way of holding it still. So I have to put some big chocks under there, I guess, because it's just slowly creeping back as I tighten the ratchet straps. Well, it's fighting me pretty good. I had to get a new, bigger, stronger ratchet strap, and now the whole car just moved forward. You can see the jack stands tilted, and I still am not even close to where I need to be. Oh man, that was difficult to line those holes up. Be careful when you're doing that. It almost took the car off the jack stands there a couple times, but I finally got it. Okay, as you can see, the vehicle is now sitting on its own weight with this jack over here. And so the coil spring is sitting at where it's going to be for ride height. Now, one of the problems I see right off the bat here is that the lower control arm is already pretty much maxed out as far as how much droop it can get. Now, that'll self-clearance eventually, but it's really one of the many problems that you run into when you do a fairly large lift on the short arms instead of doing a long arm. So, one of the things I could do to combat that is to move that cam bolt so that's further out here. That'll give it a little bit more clearance here, but I'm going to see how it rides first and go from there. But really that's not what that's for. That's to adjust the angle of the dangle. But really the pinion angle looks pretty good right now. It looks more like it did before we started. Okay, so for the next order of business we need to account for the track bar in the front. You can see, now that I've got it lifted up, the track bar wants to be more over here. So what we're going to do is come over 3/4 of an inch from the original hole and just drill a hole right there. An alternative, if this wasn't the cheap Jeep, would be to buy an adjustable track bar. Alright, once again you'll notice we've got some holes that don't line up. So what we need to do is take a ratchet strap again. We'll put one on this side on the axle and one on that side on the frame, and we'll see if we can move it over. So close. Come on. Not strong enough. Alright, it's really close. Problem now is there's a clearance issue again. Right there, so we need to clearance that. There. So you may be asking what I'm going to do with the front sway bar links, and I'm going to do something very basic. I'm just going to extend them, make them longer. At the same time, I'll try to make a quick type disconnect. And so all I've done is take a piece of square tubing I had lying around. I'm going to cut it right here, weld this onto the bottom piece, extend it and weld it onto the top piece. That'll make it about 4 inches longer. Alright, so here is my extended sway bar, and for the quick release all I did was I took a bolt, I drilled a small hole through it, this is a 1/2 inch bolt, and then I just welded it in place. I welded it kind of up at an angle because if you've ever dealt with quick releases you know that they're not quick at all. And I put it at an angle because whenever you're trying to get it on there it wants to start high and then end low. So now you just slip it on like that. You take a washer, you put it on there, and then you take some kind of a pin and slip it through that hole, and then there you go. That's your quick release. When you want to take it off, you pull the pin, take the washer off, hammer it out like that, and then the hard part is going to be figuring out how to tie it up. I'll need to take some zip ties and get it up out of the way whenever I'm ready to go off-road. From that angle it looked kind of close, but you can see there's quite a bit of distance between the spring and the sway bar. Okay guys, let's put this thing back together now. We're going to use the U-joint axle shafts, and we got new brakes and pads, and let's get it done. Now that we've lifted the vehicle, we're at full droop. You can see that there's not enough room for the brake line. So we need to do something about that. A cheap way to do that So that's a cheap way of doing it. You just unbolt it, stretch out the hard line. I would recommend that you put it back though, otherwise if you don't it's going to flex and break that hard line over time. Not the best way to do it, but it certainly is cheap. And now even at full flex we still have plenty of usable brake line. That was a bummer. Sweet! So the front is done. Well, I probably need to do an alignment, but we'll do that later. Let's move back to the rear. If you remember, when I lifted the rear, I had the rear axle was sticking too far out to the passenger side, and I wanted to go ahead and correct that. So I was looking at cheap options for the track bar. Now you can get an adjustable track bar, but it's not really cheap. So what I did, I got a hold of Rough Country, and this bracket only comes with their kit, but I contacted them and they said that if you want to buy this separately, they could do it for 30 bucks. So that's this drop bracket. It goes in here and it relocates your axle back to the center by just repositioning the mount for the track bar. So that's 30 bucks, and if you want the drop for the transfer case, this drops your skid plate down, and they'll throw that in for the whole thing for 50 bucks. So some of you are probably thinking that I could make one of these with the tools that I have, and yeah, I could, but I'm trying to make this, like I told you before, so that anybody could do it. And sometimes it's just easier. For 30 bucks, it's probably easier just to go ahead and buy it than to take, 2 or 3 hours making this thing. So the exhaust is gonna be really close when I get that in there, so let's clearance that a little bit. Okay, well that took some brute force, but the axle is back where it should be in the center, so that's good news. Problem solved. And it does just clear the exhaust, probably about a little more than a 1/4 inch right there. Isn't that the most satisfying feeling in the world when you put a lifted vehicle back on the ground and you get to see it for the first time? Sweet!